Hi everybody, this is Jimmy and welcome back to Jimmy Does Knitting. This is my YouTube podcast where I talk about my knitting and crafting adventures. It's mostly knitting, it's a lot of sweaters. And today we're talking about a tale of three sweaters. That's the topic. If you're new here, we pick a topic and then we go with that. It's not necessarily a regular sort of finished objects, works in progress, acquisitions podcast. It's sort of a theme-ish to do with my regular knitting. If you want more information, you can check me out on Ravelry and on Instagram at Jimmy Does Knitting. I think I'm looking down at my whips over there. Let's get into it today. I want to talk about some more technical things today. So if you're not interested and you want sort of the overview, you can check in the show notes all of the pattern names, the yarn that I'm talking about, and I'm going to include chapters with this, so if you want, you can skip forward, back, do all the things. So let's talk about what I'm wearing. I finally finished my Clum sweater. Clum, C-U-L-M. It's by Fiona Alice for Brooklyn Tweed. This is a paid-for pattern that I don't know, it was a couple years old, and I saw somebody on Instagram knitting it, and I was like, oh, I have to have this. Let's go for it. I used a new yarn, and I think that this is a really good example of modifying garments, specifically for men, but in general, modifying garments, because I don't think we talk about that enough here, and I think it's really important, especially since we're making a handmade made for you specific garment and what that entails and how to make something that you'll actually wear. And I'm pretty fast. I'm also unemployed. So I can knit a sweater in about a month. And this one took 2.5 months. Partially because it wasn't my main project, but also I had to re-knit a sleeve and do all that stuff. So let's talk about the yarn, and then we'll walk through the garment, because that's where the meat of everything is. Oh my gosh, crow attack. Sorry. I'm filming this in front of a window that looks over the roofs. I'm in the attic part, and it's converted into a craft room is what we're using it for in my house. It's whatever. There's a courtyard and people feed the pigeons, and it's a thing. Anyway, you didn't need to know about that. Let's talk about this. The yarn. So for Christmas, I asked for Kinross floor ply. I've heard about this from the Creabea, from the Woolly Worker, a bunch of people, and I was like, I have to try this out. The issue from me working with it previously was I live in Amsterdam, so I live in Europe, and it is a British yarn. Luckily, though, my in-laws are British, so my Christmas gift was a sweater's quantity of this yarn. And I ordered 7 skeins, and according to the pattern, I needed 7, but then I also lengthened the sleeves, the sleeves and the body 3 inches. So I was like, I hope I can get this out of 7 skeins. And the answer was yes. I have almost a whole skein left. This is it. It's in black. It's the color 17. It's it's called a 4-ply. It's a fingering weight yarn, 205 meters, or 224 yards per 50 grams, 28 stitches per 10 centimeters, 4 inches. It's non-superwash. Yeah, so that's the yarn. I think it's a really nice yarn. It has a really nice hand feel, which I wasn't expecting. I was a bit scared at first because if you knit it up, and I addressed this in a couple of my other podcasts when I didn't show this, it really looks almost stringy and it's never going to fill out. When you block, it fills out beautifully. It's nice, and you can see it especially here. There's no holes. I mean, there is in the stress point, but it's pretty good in terms of how it fills in and how it looks. I was a bit scared about that, but no. So I would recommend this yarn. It's super soft. Fingering weight garments that are not color work are sort of a newer thing for me. I get really cold, so I like a heavier weight thing. And then I like texture because I prefer heavier weight yarn and texture as opposed to just stockinette. That's a different story. But yeah, so I would recommend this yarn. I will say that the black had a lot more bleed of color than I was expecting. I knit with a lot of black yarn, so I have a general idea. Like it's going to bleed as you wash. That's like a thing with dark colored yarn or heavily saturated colors. I know red has that issue where it bleeds, it gives off color when you wash and block it. That's fine. But this had a lot more than I was expecting, so I think that's my only one warning about the yarn. But overall, it's pretty good. I will say the only thing that's preventing me from like getting this regularly is the import tax. I don't want to pay it. As I said, I was unemployed. I don't want to do it. It's 21% here in the Netherlands, so it's the cost of the yarn, which is pretty affordable, but then it's the VAT. I don't mind the shipping. So yeah, that's the reason why I guess I won't use this a tremendous amount, but if I want some from the UK and I'm visiting or it's Christmas or something, I will definitely go and consider getting some more of this. So that is the yarn. Now, let me walk you through this garment. Let me throw it on the ground. This is a bottom up knit in the round, and then you join at the shoulders, and so the front and the back are knit flat, and then you pick up and add the sleeves. Now, this is a really cool garment because it has this bottom on this hem. It has this really beautiful like twisted stitch and eyelet. The front panel is this really cool twisted stitch, which I think is really nice. And then the sleeves and then the side and the back are all, like, look at this little detail, are all a seed stitch, which I think looks cozy and amazing and super nice. And I really liked how this sweater looked. And so I looked into it, I roughly bought it, and I thought that that was like what I want to do. I ordered 7 skeins, as I said. According to, I think, like the actual yardage used in something, I probably should have used 8, but I'm learning that the way I purl uses an incredibly, like, less. I don't use as much yarn when I purl as like normal people because I Eastern purl. I twist my purl stitches. It's a bigger discussion, but it's like 10 to 15% less yarn, maybe even more. And since this is knit purl texture everywhere, I use a lot less yarn. So that is something and why I had all that extra yarn. Look, so this pattern is this is a masterclass in like modification, let's say. The pattern dimensions and stuff are like written for women, and you're like, okay, I can elongate this for a male body or a different type of body. It's a little bit cropped, and I should be fine, but I did some other modifications. So the hem, this bottom part right here, oops, sorry, clinked my chair. This was meant to be knit flat, and then like in the back, it had like a split. And I chose not to do that. A couple reasons why is one, on the pattern, it called for a 2.75 millimeter needle, which I have and I was going to use, but like at the gauge, it wasn't going to fit around my hips. And like, I am not a large man by any means, but it wouldn't like fit around my hips according to the gauge and the pattern and stuff like that. So I modified that to knit it in the round. It wasn't that difficult. It's like 1x1 ribbing and some like basic lace stuff. So that's fine. And then I started knitting the body. Now the body's supposed to have increases, so it goes like this, and the stitch count didn't look right to me. Like for the first size, it was supposed to be like 40 more stitches than what I have here to get this exact same width. And I knew from knitting sweaters previously that like that's not going to be too much. I did not do a gauge swatch because according to the pattern, I would have like just the right amount of yarn. So what I did is I knit up the first ball hank, skein, whatever it is, and then I blocked it. And what I discovered was without increasing, I'm at the width that I want. So seed stitch is a stitch that kind of goes like it blows out a little bit. And it like, your gauge and stockinette would be like this, and then your gauge and seed stitch would be like this with the same amount of stitches. So I knew that. And then I also knew that I'm around like 230-ish to get the size that I want for the stitches. So I kind of did that. So I figured out what circumference I wanted after that, and then I knit to the length that I wanted without increasing, because I was already at the number of stitches that I wanted for the circumference, if that makes sense. So that was a modification that I did. Another important modification for this is a pattern written for women, and a lot of patterns written for men or women tend to have like standard sizing and take into accommodation different things that may or may not fit your body. They certainly did not jive with mine on this one, specifically the lengths, but also some other things. The amount of stitches in the back was significantly less than the amount of stitches in the front of the pattern, and that is to accommodate things happening in the front of the shirt to have a little bit more ease. I think it was also partially a design choice, but it was also for a little bit more like somebody with a bust, which I do not have. I'm pretty flat. No muscle, no nothing. So another thing I did is, once I figured out the stitch count, is I made it even front and back, as opposed to having the back with fewer stitches and the front with more stitches, which messed up like how many like stitches before this motif. It was really easy to calculate and like modify, but that's something that I did in order to get this garment to fit me. So that's something to be conscious of. If you are a bustier person or you need some shaping or something, I think that's something to look into, is fewer stitches on the back, more stitches in the front. I don't really have much experience in that, but I'm sure people can speak better to that than me. So those are the modifications I did up to the armpit, I guess. And then the size, I switched from the size 1, which is the smallest size-ish. But like at this point, I didn't have the right amount of stitches. But like for this part, I basically followed what I had done before. Oops, sorry. But I like did the depth and stuff of a 3, size 3 for the yoke depth. And then for the neck is a little bit wider, and like typically for women's patterns, now I have a shirt that kind of rides up high, but this is a larger neck than I typically would go for. And for women's patterns, there tends to be a lot more like drape and ease and stuff of the neckline. I don't particularly like that. I like a tighter neck because my neck being cold is a thing. And I also don't necessarily like the more, let's say, feminine shaped necks. It just is like a wider neck is just not something I'm so interested in. So I did the stitch count for like the smallest size neck for here, and then I made sure that I had the same amount of stitches on the shoulders, front and back, in order to do the 3 needle bind off, which was there, which I love a 3 needle bind off. I think it's great. It seems super, super sturdy. Like, it's really good. It's a technique that I enjoy. I'm not going to put it on every sweater, but it's really good. So anyway, I did the neck, and then I picked up fewer stitches on the neck than recommended because I like a tighter neck, and I was really like, it was huge. It was huge. And I was like, I'm not going to wear this otherwise. And then, let me get a little bit closer. I did knit the neck just flat. I don't remember if it's a folded or not, but I knit it flat, and I knit it a little bit longer, and then I did a tubular bind off on the neck, and I think that that works for me. So that brings it in a lot more to where I would wear it in like a shape that fits my body, I think, a little bit better. So that's the modification that I did. Then let's get into it more. If that wasn't complicated enough, because I am bigger, taller, longer, I knit the sleeves at a different rate. So I followed the basic pattern. For the ribbing, I'm using the same needle as I did for the rest of the garment, which was 3.25 millimeters, which I believe was the recommended needle size, but I'm not sure. You're supposed to go down for the ribbing. I didn't. I just kept it the same. So I wanted the sleeve to be the same shape-ish and the same details. So it has, let me see, it's a drop shoulder, so the shoulder's a little bit over here. But it has this eyelet row motif, and then the cuff right here is the same as the hem. So I wanted to keep that, does my knitting look all right? I don't know, I can tell. Anyway, I wanted to keep that there, but then everything in between needed to change because I think the sleeves were supposed to be 13 inches long and mine were like 20 or something. It was a big difference. So I did not look at the decrease rates, and I knit one sleeve, this sleeve, and I was like, oh, it should be fine if I decrease. I think it was like every 6 stitches. I'm going to start using numbers now because I'm way off pattern by this point. And I knit it up and I hated it. I hated it, and I knew that I would not wear this if I continued with this. And so I literally cut off my bind off, and I had to reknit the sleeve because I just didn't like it. I knew I would never wear it. I've already been through so much with this pattern. It's a $9 pattern, and like I've so heavily modified this that I think that I was like, look, I've invested a lot of time, a decent amount of money for a pattern that like I roughly used the motif of, and the rest I kind of like redid all of the numbers. So I was like, I slept on it, and then I cut it off. So we're going to cut to how it used to look, as well as how I figured out the sleeve decreases. Because what I did is I did knit it to the right length that I wanted, but it just was too big. So I'm cutting for that right here. So I just wanted to document this. I finished the sleeve, and as you can see, it's quite wide. I just don't like it. It looks a bit like, I don't know, it's too much of a barrel or whatever. So we're gonna go over some sleeve math and figure out how to fix this. The answer is I'm gonna rip it out till about, you see the last stitch marker, the purple stitch marker? About there, and then we're gonna have a different increase rate. So I'm going to show you next how I calculated that increase rate, and then we'll show the final sweater. All right, we know the sleeve doesn't fit. We know we want to recalculate. So let's do some sleeve math. Now this is not how I would do a sleeve math from scratch, but since I've already knit the sleeve, I know kind of what's going on. So I know, because I've knit it already, that this is the armhole depth, and then this is the cuff. So we need to pick up 124 stitches. And I also know, because I've knit it to the size that I like, that I need to do it over 132 rows. Now, for the cuff width, what I did for this was I just pinched it. So I took my cuff, I pinched it, and I just counted the amount of stitches that were left on the cuff to the side that I wanted. And that ended up being about 64 stitches. So, how do we calculate these sleeve decreases then? We are going to first figure out how many decreases we need. So 124 minus 64 equals 60 stitches. So that's how many stitches we need to decrease from this. Oops. Sorry, I hit the camera. So we need to decrease 60 stitches. Now, decreases are usually done in pairs. So we're going to divide these 60 by 2, and so we're left with 30 decreases that I want to make on this sleeve. Now, how many rows and how many things is that going to be? That's a really big question. What you have to do is you have to play around with it a little bit, but I can tell you kind of what I ended up going with. So if we decrease I want to decrease every even round, so 2, 4, 6, 8, just because the stitch pattern is in moss stitch and it has a 2-stitch repeat. So for me, that's going to be the easiest. You can do it on odds, but just for simplicity's sake, I did it on evens. I know that 6 times 5 equals 30, and that 4 times 25 equals 100. And so that would equal 130. And what that means is that I reduce every 6 stitch 5 times, and that will get 30 rows. And then I'll reduce every 4th stitch 25 times, and that will get us an additional 100 rows. And that's about as close as I'm going to get in terms of how like accurate I get to the 132. So that's what we're going to do on the sleeve decrease, and then we're going to add 2 more rows of just plain stockinette, or not plain stockinette, 2 more rows in pattern in order to get the length of 132 rows, and then we'll do the cuff and everything that we want from there. So that is a little bit of how I've done the sleeve decreases on this particular garment, and the calculations I probably should have done in the beginning, but I had not. So this is our formula. We're going forward, and back to the final result. So that is the sleeve saga for you. May I reiterate that this is a fingering weight garment with yarn that I can't get and I spent a lot of time on. So I think ultimately ripping back the sleeves was the only way that I was going to wear this thing. And I hope that the math kind of made some sense and what I was talking about made some sense. That's not how I would calculate sleeves from scratch, but it's certainly a little bit of information that I think you need to know. Another thing about the sleeves before we like complete this thing is I mean like this hits at a good spot. I mean they're a little bit uneven because I was stretched and didn't stretch and whatever, but this hits at a good spot. And what I do is I typically, and you may have noticed in the video, I knit to about like here, because no matter what you do and what your gauge swatch says or anything like that, your garment's going to grow if it's a sweater, especially with like cables or heavier yarn. If you have like a heavy alpaca, it's going to grow longer and the arms are going to grow longer just with blocking and wear and stuff like that. So if you have the perfect sleeve length as you're knitting it, it's probably going to be longer than you want it after you block it, especially with like a drop shoulder thing. And this also goes for my next sweater that I'm going to show, which I swear we'll get to because we've talked about this for like a half hour. When you do a pickup around like a drop shoulder sleeve, the way that you do it if you knit top down is it sort of crunches the fabric. Actually, let me get out this next one. We'll jump a little bit in ahead. This needs to be steamed, but like there's a little bit of a bunch when you pick up right here for the sleeves and you start knitting this way, and when you soak it and you block it, that like bunch releases, just sort of like how cables or like ribbing sort of grows as you block it. It's the same thing if you pick up top down for a drop shoulder. So I always knit my sleeves a little short, knowing that they'll grow, I don't know, as I block. So that's the general rule. I think that those are all my modifications. It took a while. Like it's an okay sweater. I would say like if you're not, it's beautiful. We're in a little bit of a fight because I was so cranky about doing this. So, and it's also not warm enough to really wear this yet. So this will be on pause until spring actually comes out. I think I'll like it then, but I don't know if I'd recommend it or not. Like if you're willing to really modify things or knit it as it is, that's fine. But like if you're not up for it, then you're not up for it. I do think it looks really beautiful. I think the motif is stunning, and I've always wanted a seed stitch sweater, and then this is it, and I think the yarn is great. But that's for a different time, different place, whatever. Yeah, so that's my 85 minutes about the Clum and how I modified it. Let me know if you like this more technical stuff, because I think I'm going to go into a little bit more just because it's important and people don't really talk about it. And I think it's if you're making a custom garment. Anyway, Next one. I gave you a little bit preview, but this was my main project when I was going through, and this is the Troy Boy sweater. It does need a steam because it has been a little bit folded up and put in a closet and stuff. But this was my main make. This is a design of mine that's coming out, I want to say like April 11th, I just figured out. It's mid-April that it's coming out. The testers are finishing it up. I've knit two versions. I knit one in Mondim back in like December, and then I have this one. The reason why I knit two was because there are two versions-ish of this pattern. I've talked about it a lot, but it's like a fingering weight drop shoulder sweater. It's designed for men in mind, but anybody else can wear it. It's just the yoke depth is a little bit different, and like the lengths are a little bit different. There are two versions. There's a fancy version, and then there's a basic version, and then this is the basic version. It comes with instructions for body decreasing or no body decreasing, and for a folded collar or a not folded collar. And so I wanted to explore that. The feature of it is it's really just plain stockinette in the round. It's a basic sweater. It's not that exciting. It is exciting if you use a cool yarn. Some of my testers have some really cool yarns and like how it's pooling or like some hand dyed. If you have like 3 or 4 skeins of hand dyed, depending on your size, you could really do something cool with this. It's knit top down. Sleeves are picked up, also knit top down. The feature of this sweater is it has like longer cuff and hem in 2x2 rib that is like a little bit longer. And I also have a tutorial about how I create this 2x2 rib in a tubular bind off on my channel. So go check that one out. But there's a line that essentially goes from on the side down into the rib, up, down underneath the sleeve, and then into the ribbing again. So like it's not much detail, but it's some detail. The fancy version has a cable pattern that flanks it. The other version does not. So this is my finished Troy Boy sweater. This is done in Westwool Bicycle in the color Dutch Sky. This is a color picked out by my dad, who lives near Troy, not in Troy. And yeah, this is gifted yarn by Stephen and Penelope. I had 8 skeins for this. This is the size 4, and this is what I have left over. Like I said, I use a little bit less yarn than other people, but yeah, so that was fine. This is, I don't know what else I want to say about that. It's coming out soon. I think it's a beautiful thing. This one has a little bit more ease. I may or may not model this one. There will also be a tutorial video of this. So you can knit along with me, and the tutorial video will be free, but the pattern will not be. You have to pay for the pattern. But it's just like a little knit with me. If you're knitting for a male knitter, or if you've never knit a sweater before, this can really help with different techniques and how to create a sweater, I guess, let's say. So, I don't know. I've talked about a Troy Boy a lot, so I'm not going to talk about this. The name it's because it's a basic sweater, and I come from a place called Troy, and the boys there are basic. The Troy boys, if you will, are really basic. So I thought it was a perfect name to have because it's like just a basic men's sweater. One thing I will say is that the sleeve pickup rate I've reduced in the final pattern. So this one has a little bit more stitches than I am going to recommend. So that should fit a little bit better and maybe like cinch in, but still having enough room for like a bicep or like a broader, more room here, let's say. I don't particularly need it, but like in general, men's yokes have something a little bit deeper. So, yeah, I mean, and like this is a really cool one. This one's for my dad. I will give it to him when I go to Spain with the whole family in May. And it's a Troy Boy sweater, but it's knit out of Dutch yarn and a Dutch color. And I think that it's kind of a nice synthesis of having, you know, home now versus home growing up sort of thing. Yeah, so it's a really nice sweater. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for basic stockinette in the round for men. I would also recommend it if you have like cool yarn that you want to use up, or if you want to stripe or something. It's really meant to be like just like a go-to pattern that's not too complicated. And I mean, men patterns are kind of boring, but this is also kind of boring. I couldn't really find a top-down fingering weight men's drop shoulder pattern, so I was like, look, I'm gonna make it. Hopefully it will be a standard. Hopefully people will like it. And this is the result. So this was my main focus, and part of the reason why you've been getting all these like pattern videos and like what do I knit and stuff like that. So I was dragging my feet on doing this, but it's done now. It's done, and it's going to be launching probably in a week and a half from when you see this video. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I think the yarn was great. They have some really cool colors in West Wool, and it's so soft. My dad is really like nothing rustic, like only the softest yarn, and he'll be quite pleased with this. It's fingering weight, so it's lightweight. You're not going to get overheated, and yeah. So this is my Troy boy. Oh, okay. One last thing. The Tale of Three Sweaters. One more. I had to put this one, like, not timeout, but like on ice, let's say, because, well, I wanted to get a haircut. I haven't had a haircut in 3.5 months, and I was like, I need a haircut before I film the next video. But this thing, it was going too fast, which is why I'm filming now. I had a whole other video planned, but like this thing is almost done. I will knit it, including the days that I put it off, in less than 2 weeks. It's Friday now. I will finish this weekend for sure. And this is in my Juki bag. I just use tote bags as project bags. We seem to get a lot of like canvas tote bags, and this is from the place where we brought our coffee table called Juki. It's in Amsterdam. It's in De Bijp. It has vintage but like well-designed furniture. It's a really cool place. I would go and check it out if you're anywhere near. People are lovely. It is a bit expensive, but they have nice stuff and really good tote bags. But I digress. I wanted to try something new-ish, but like really it's not a big departure for me. It's the Lanark sweater by the Creabea. I'm not much of a trendy knitter, but let's go with this. So this is a fisherman's rib. So it has like that deep ribby texture. And then it's the one with like the collar in the back and then the zip up front. And I thought, one, I was craving like some deep rib. Like I want some squish. And then two, I was like, would this be something that I would like because I don't like having a cold neck? And then this solves that problem. I think the answer ultimately is yes. I've had so much fun knitting this, and I do think that I will probably wear it a lot. I don't know if I'll look cool. I probably won't look cool. I don't know why I'm concerned about looking cool, but whatever. And then get that done. So I didn't know how I would feel about this, so I bought really cheap yarn. I bought 17 balls of Drops Daisy. I think, honestly, I'm going to need 12, 13. I'm gonna have quite a few left over. This is Drop's new DK weight non-superwash yarn. I also got this on sale, so like this whole sweater cost me less than 50 euros. Not that Drops is expensive anyway, but like I saw this Drop sale and I was like, well, I'm going to use this yarn for this project anyway, so let's get it. So this is really, like, I'll have 4 skeins left over and it still was less than 50 euros. It's a soft yarn. I'm concerned this is going to pill like a mother and wear poorly, but I can always reknit or something. It was an experiment. This was the right choice for the time. I will give you a review on how this yarn holds up. Anyway, Drops Daisy. It's merino wool. It's a DK weight yarn. This is color 03. It's just the black. It's nothing really special. But this sweater was so much fun. It's sheath thick. Hold on. I do want to do this without like dropping everything. So, this is the Lanark sweater, and you can see what I mean by the collar. So this is a collar. I'm going to install a zip here. I'm going to finish this weekend. I'm going to go down to Markt, which is a market by my house. If you ever visit Amsterdam, I think it's worth coming to the Pipe and looking at Markt. But they have like sewing stores and stuff. So I'll get a zipper for this. Don't know if you can see this. This is a top-down construction in half fisherman's rib, so it's like pseudo brioche, but not really. You have, you work the collar, you fold it over, you knit the back, and then you knit the front on the two sides, and you combine it. And it's really fun. It's super rhythmic. It's a nice sweater. It has a really good squish factor. I'm knitting the size 2. I'm knitting it on 3.5 millimeter needles. So like, look, earlier this year, I was like, let's do everything fingering weight, and this is a little bit bigger of a needle size, and my hands thank me for it. And a little bit better of a stitch pattern, because I was getting like really bad RSI, and I think that this is better. Anyway, you don't care about that. What you do want to know is that this yoke was so much fun to knit. It's like I learned a lot of techniques. You use a Judy's Magic cast on, and then there's like, I can't really give it all away, but you like knit the collar first, and then you put some stitches on hold, and you knit the back, and then you like pick up and go down in the front. I think it's really cool construction. I'm impressed with how it's written, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to this. On the cuffs and the hem, what I did was I just used the same thing. It's just a 1x1 rib. I didn't go down any sizes with the needle as suggested, and I just did a tubular bind off, but I didn't do any of the setup rows that I normally did because this yarn is kind of floofy. I don't know. For some reason, I was like, I'm not going to do the setup rows, and I think it looks fine. It's a nice little finish still. So yeah, I'm cranking on this. I really like knitting it. I will be sad when it's done, but I'm going to give you a preview of next episode, so you can't be too sad. But yeah, really liking this. We will see what happens. The only remarks I really have on this is I think for the collar and then the upper part, I did get caught on one little part because I think if anything it's like over explained. I don't know if that makes sense, but like I know that a lot of people were having problems with this, so she did like a video and like a couple of videos that were included with the patterns, and like she re-updated it, and I think maybe she added too much explanation because then I was like getting confused. I don't need a hand holding pattern, and to be honest, I really don't read a pattern line by line because I knit so many sweaters, but I'm just kind of like, let's just do this. So I think that is a bit of a criticism, but in general it's like not a big deal. And then also for the men's sizes, she said that like men and women can knit the same sweater to pattern per size and that it should be fine. I would say the one caveat I have for that is I don't know, the armpit depth, the armhole depth, I guess, needs to be bigger. I'm not a big man. I don't have big arms, as we've discussed, but I think that the depth of the armhole needs to be bigger, at least for maybe for men in general. I think it's just too short for the proportions that I normally find comfortable. It will like bunch my t-shirts a little bit. I would knit it maybe like a half inch longer. So what I would do first is you're supposed to knit the panels, and then you have your back panel on hold, knit the panel, front panel, and then like combine all in one. What I would probably do would be combine first for the front, so you have one front piece that you work for maybe like 4 extra rows, like a half inch, and then like do that so that way the zipper length is the same as it was in the pattern. Then you do your shaping if you need to do shaping, and then I would combine in the round. I think that is my only like criticism of this one. But other than that, I'm very excited to get this off my needles and onto my body. I think I will be wearing this quite a bit. So we'll see. I can see, because I've been handling it quite a lot, that the yarn is wearing a bit, let's say. We know that Drops is an affordable yarn. It's not going to be made to the highest quality standards. It's super soft. I think it works for this, but I'm concerned it's going to pill. It sort of feels like, if you've ever used We Are Knitters, they're Mary Fine. They're like worsted weight merino. Like, it's very something similar to that. I don't like that yarn. I don't like We Are Knitters yarn. I like, as soon as you look at it, it pills. It just doesn't have enough twist. I think the ethics behind it are so. Also, the yarn doesn't last. It looks trendy if you don't wear it, but like, it doesn't last. And they do surge pricing. So if they know that a color is popular, they'll charge more for it, and the least popular colors, they'll have like their baseline, what they need. So like, let's say they make, I don't know, €5 on a skein of yarn. Typically they'll start everything at that, but like, if cream is really in the season, they'll charge like €10 for it or something. It's really not the best business practices, and I know that they don't play nice with local yarn stores either and stuff. So their stuff looks cool and trendy, but I would not a fan. And I've knit with We Are Knitters several times. I have a sweater in that it's pilled like terrible. Like, I can barely wear it out in public. So I don't know why I went on. Oh, because it sort of reminds me of this yarn. Anyway, and it's very expensive. We Are Knitters is very expensive for what you're getting, and it's just not worth it. Anyway, that's a little rant I have. I think that's it. So this is the third sweater. I'm going to maybe finish knitting the sleeve today, and then go to the market and like knit the facing and install a zipper this weekend. And I think that's about it for the sweaters. Let's go into a little bit of a preview. There's going to be some crinkling, but I have big plans. I'm really, as discussed, like my last video, I talk about 15 sweater knitting ideas, or basically like what I have in my queue for sweater, or like what I may or may not do. And I'm clearly going for it. And I have some yarn that I want to show you. I'm just going to do the show you. I'm not going to tell you too much about it, because we have a whole other episode that's going to be very long about that. But yeah, let's get into it. I've had some yarn deliveries yesterday. So once all my fingering weight projects are done, I'm going to finally skein up this tweed that I got. I got it at a festival called Breidache. This is from a place called the Draadkracht. It is merino with like viscose flex. It's a fingering weight yarn. It has some tweed. I have a sweater I'm going to make out of this. So I'm going to do that, but I need the other fingering weight projects off of my needles. I also got 2 yarn deliveries yesterday, which I was very excited about. One was from Wool Dreamers, which is a small little place in Spain. But like, this specific yarn is grown in the city, like fully processed and sold in like the same city, which is like unheard of these days. And I really like my interactions with them, and I think the yarn is going to be good. They also sell Manchlopi, which I previously worked with. It's an unspun yarn. Highly recommend. It has beautiful like heathered hues in it. This is not their softest. This is like local sheep breeds. Like, what the sheep are, I think varies depending on what's happening there. I'll get more into this next episode. Anyway, I got this. I got 7 balls for, including taxes and shipping. It was €77 for 7 balls, and this is like a DK-ish worsted weight yarn. So that's pretty affordable, I think. And I mean, if I can get a sweater for under €100, I'm into it. Which is also why fingering weight's a good thing, but I don't know if I like it or not. We'll see. Anyway, The Mota from Wool Dreamers I think is really cool too. And then I got a package from Ireland. This is Studio Donegal. This is their Marled collection. They have a website that runs on like MS-DOS. It's like Windows 96. Like it's old. And they like do not do very many updates. So they finally updated their stuff, and I've been looking at this yarn for a specific project, and I finally bought some. I am a bit disappointed, and I only because on the website this looked like it was going to be black with like a gray marl and some like brownish stuff, almost like tweedy looking, and this is a brown yarn. This is clearly brown, but it didn't look like that on the website. It looked like there were two variations of black, black with brown flecks and black with like some red flecks. So I'm a bit disappointed with that, and I might have to pivot on the plans for this, but like I always do, I bought like one extra skein of yarn in order to do something, so I should be fine if I need to make this in a bigger size, what I have planned in a bigger size. But that's it. That is a bit of a tease. I'm gonna put this down. That's my bit of a tease for upcoming projects, upcoming things. I hope that you enjoyed this really in-depth discussion and some general things about sweaters. There's just going to be sweaters on the needles for a while. So if that's your jam, then please comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can see next time I release videos about sweaters. The next 2 or 3 will for sure be sweater videos. And then maybe back to stash busting. I'm not really quite sure. But that's all very exciting stuff. Thank you for joining me. Like I said, like, subscribe, tell people. Let me know if there's anything you really want to know about like sweater modifications or something like that. We'll go into that a little bit more coming up. Thank you for joining me. I'm starting to ramble, so I will check you all later. Bye.